Yo, what's going on, everybody out there? Happy New Year. Happy 2015 now, I think. Um, we are joined here on Bad Publicity by Mr. Greg, and uh, you know him on the boards as Paranoid, but we know him as Joe, or he's do you have your title belt there? Current Stim Hack League champion.
Yeah. Trying to make a run at the second one too. We'll see. Yeah, thanks guys. Good to be here.
On everybody out there. Happy New
I
Year.
think I think Ben's in the chat here, so um, he might have some comments on the game. I think we were all in there watching you. Who's that schlump that you were playing against? He didn't really give you that much of a run for your money,
Yeah,
did
yeah, Greg.
he? Greg,
One game
any
and it's
comments
over.
there?
It was a pretty tight game. I think it was anyone's ball game.
Yeah, it was. It was a good match. It was nice to see, and if you have Ben's Twitter, or what is it, Twitch, you can see a recording of the game up there. So guys, welcome to 2015. We are a couple weeks away from a big box expansion, and getting right into things, we got store championships coming up. Some people might not have that box expansion available to them when their store championship plays, so we're not going to really touch on the cards that are in that expansion right now. But what we're going to do is talk about assets, because assets have come back in a big way. Everyone had their core sets, and they were pad and mining away, and then those kind of got put on the shelf, and new ways to make burst economy. You know, we saw Lucky Find got really big. I think it's 99.9% of the decks still have Sure Gamble in them. Hedge funds. And Jinteki got a whole bunch of weird ways to make money. But what are you guys' thoughts on assets these days?
I think um, I think it's become a really cool way to play the game as the corporation. Um, I think it's more viable now than ever before, simply for the fact that there is so many high priority assets to trash. So it's like sometimes the best way you beat AP or Deus Ex is making them use it a million times. Just have so many things that they can't like humanly use it enough times where it's effective. It's kind of the same way with assets, where if you have enough high priority assets out there, and so many things are strength or trash costs like 4 or 5 now too. And we'll get into specific assets, but I think that's kind of why they're working now, is because there's so many good ones, and the runners have to start picking their battles, and they have to know when to trash, when not to trash, when to leave them alone, what are the most important ones to trash if you can only trash one and there's 3 high priority ones. So you make the runner make a lot of decisions that maybe they haven't had to make in the past. So I think it's emerging as a fun play style. And not to mention too, cards like Diversified Portfolio and even Turtlebacks, give it a unique kind of economy as well. So it's kind of coming into its own with support cards to make it a complete play style.
I'll try and throw some of the cards that we touch on up in the side here. But because this is live, I can't flip so quick. Joe, going to you, do you think that it was a little bit of a learning curve for trash costs with Fantasy Flight? Do you think they figured it out now about what should be at what value?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. A lot of the early assets had a very low trash cost from the core set and from the first few expansions, data packs. And nowadays, the trash costs are increasing every data pack, and they're becoming better and better and more viable to play in competitive play in Netrunner. And so, yeah, I don't know, they're kind of going overboard maybe, I don't know, but definitely it's sad to see some of the assets from like the core that and from the first few data packs that are interesting but just have such a low trash cost that they're not viable to play. But Yeah.
Greg, where are you at for values on trash these days?
Yeah, they're
Like we got turtlebacks up right now here, and we're looking at a trash cost of 4 for this card now. Like, what's important to you? Is it the trash cost to the res cost, or are you looking more at what you can get from it?
all the above. I mean, I think that it's really neat in how assets are. There's a different dimension of the versatility because at this point in the game now, there's several cards that can suck money away from you from HQ. You know, like Vamp or Account Siphon or Lamprey, whatever. And it's always nice to have some high res cost assets for that kind of protection, like hostile takeover. So I think that's important to have that, or maybe even like a pad campaign and something that costs 3, like balancing out between a couple assets. Nobody ever wants to get hit with a siphon and lose all that money, and so assets are a really nice way to sink that. That's not news, but I think the trash cost is a really important distinction for why assets are viable now. Like I said, because like Turtlebacks is 4. I don't know that that's like a powerhouse like Daily Business Show is. Like Daily Business Show is a powerhouse card. It's a 2 res cost, 4 trash, and it's a must trash. Like if you let the corp just sit on that thing all game, they get such a tremendous advantage from that, and so you got to get in there and trash that. But then you have a pad campaign rolling, which is usually a must trash, or a sand now going, and it gets tricky. So, but yeah, it's definitely all because of the higher trash cost that things are getting, and it's putting a lot of pressure on the runner.
Well, Sansan's an upgrade too, so it's one of
Yeah,
those.
that's true. But I mean, same principle.
Yeah,
Trash
yeah.
cost, etc.
Is there what's your favorite new one? Then, Joe, is there anything you're experimenting with for assets? How are you working these into your decks now?
Well, I just kind of want to touch on one thing, though. I think a huge reason why assets have come back is just because of the prevalence of Near Earth Hub,
Mm-hmm.
and that assets become so much more economically viable to play with the extra draw. So then Pad and Marked have been around forever, but people didn't play him that often. But nowadays, it's just worth it to play when you play Near Earth Hub, and then you add in the new stuff like Daily Business Show and executive boot camp and stuff like this, and so we get solid ones on top of just the near Earth Hub draw. It just becomes viable to play them now.
Do you guys have a preference over pad or marked accounts? Or like if you're making a near Earth hub deck, are you putting equal amounts in of each one? Or do you lean towards one or the other?
Well, I'm gonna say I just put 3 of each, but I think pad is probably better. I don't know. It's a toss up.
Just because you think that click slows you down sometimes to charge it?
Yeah, yeah. If the runner doesn't trash pad all game, it nets you many more credits than a marked accounts will if they don't trash a marked accounts all game. So it just depends on if they trash it.
Greg, what do you think about marked accounts out of faction? You think that's a viable play?
Well, sure. I mean, it's one influence, so, um, but you got to look at what your deck is trying to do. I think a lot of times, like, I don't think it works very well in a Jinteki deck because so much of your clicks are going to be like advancing stuff, and you don't really want to be sitting there clicking on marked accounts per se. But but I mean, it's okay. Yeah, especially if you're playing a lot of high trash cost assets. Um, then marked accounts is great because that's a beast at 5 to kill it.
Uh, Ben's hitting up the chat rooms pretty hard with some good questions here. He says, this is a two-parter. What high trash cost asset do you think should have been lower? Like something that's so overpowered. He gives an example like should Sansan or Daily Business Show been lowered down? And then likewise, what low trash asset should be higher?
Yeah. Interesting question. Um, so he's implying that the card in itself would be out of balance. So um, I think Sansan at 5 is pretty brutal. I think 4 would have been a lot more manageable for what the card actually does. That's pretty crazy. Granted, it's a 6 is a very high res cost, so it has that going against it. Um, but then the one that sticks out in my mind that I think has always been undervalued to trash is River Valley. And not that that's like an amazing card, although it's not a bad card. But
It's
the
like the
fact that
only
it
card that I didn't make a slide for.
no, well, no, it's just came off the top of my head. Um, but I think that was at least my initial reaction to that card is, whoa, how come Sansan has a greater effect and costs 5? I just felt like River Valley maybe should have been like a 6 trash cost, um, just to really make it annoying. But um, yeah, Daily Business Show at 3 probably would have been better. The same cost as Jackson, but I don't know. Those are the few that come to my mind.
Yeah, I would agree that Daily Business Show at 3 would have been better than 4. I think Melange could have been like a 2 trash cost, and it could see more play. Like the 1 trash cost for the Melange is pretty bad. I think if it was like 2 trash costs, that would help Glacier builds a little. I don't know.
Yeah, that's always been a hard card to put a pinpoint on there. So many times I want to reach for it, but so many times that 1 trash cost, like if that gets pulled off R&D, it's gone for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, people don't hesitate to trash something for 1 at all. Like,
Mm-hmm.
but then again, on the flip side, can you think about how game changing that would have been if Melange did have a higher trash cost? That you might look at a whole different popularity for that card.
Well, yeah, I'm just saying because it's pretty much a dead card and it's not used a lot at all, so it would have been maybe nice to see it.
Yeah, for sure. But I'm just like any like little tweaks to these cards, will definitely change the meta style of
Yeah.
Well,
builds.
yeah, that's what makes cards playable and not playable a lot of the time is just how efficient they are in what they do.
An interesting one, that Ben hit us up for an example is server diagnostics, and this is one that I kind of wanted to touch on a bit too. This is a 3 to res, 2 to trash. You gain 2 credits when your turn begins, and you trash it when you install a piece of ice. This is a card that I have only heard about being played and never seen being played. And someone was using it in a Blue Sun, and Aaron was the one telling me about it when he got played against it at Worlds, and they were just bouncing it. That was their bounce every turn, which is kind of ingenious play. But what do you guys think about server diagnostics?
Yeah, I mean, reason why it doesn't get played, and I think a big reason is because it's just 2 to wipe out. I mean, it's a totally different story. Like, if you look at like, for example, Eve campaign, um, that card has always been a favorite of mine because, yeah, it has a high res cost, but it has that high trash cost too. And you can lure runs with an Eve campaign and sink a lot of credits for a runner. And if they leave it alone, of course, then you make a lot of money. But server diagnostics, it's like you're gonna lose on that deal no matter what, because it's relatively expensive to trash, and they're gonna get in cheap and trash it. I mean, if they have Desperado, they're trashing it for 1 basically. So you paid 3 to net 1 plus the install and all that. So it's just really hard, and now you can't even like install a piece of ice over it to protect it. So um, it's an interesting concept, I think, but maybe with cards like Hostile Infrastructure, it gets better because now there's more of a trash cost involved than just the 2 credits or encrypted protocol rather. Maybe makes it a little better, of course, as all assets are a little better with those on the table, but Yeah, it's brutal at two trash.
Now that kind of when you were talking about it, do you think that maybe it's not like that because of it would have just been a neutral Sundew if it was 2-2-2?
Um,
Well, wait, it nets you 2 credits per turn? I thought it netted to do one.
two.
Yeah, server diagnostic grabs you two,
Oh,
gain
okay.
two credits when your turn begins, like right away.
Okay, okay.
And then if you install a piece of ice, you trash it.
I
Yeah,
mean,
but Sundew you can install stuff with, so it's a lot different. So
yeah,
if they made the cost better on that card, it still wouldn't be anywhere near as good as Sundew is.
I think, but Sundew just pays you on the click, right? As soon as
Well,
something
yeah, I
happens.
mean you only play Sundew in RP really, but
Yeah,
so they're just very different cards.
same trash value. Um, are you guys doing anything different? Like, if you're planning to play uh, a lot of these assets, do you really think about protecting them, upping the ice counts, or does it depend on which, like I said, like which ones you're putting in there?
yeah. That's a really interesting question. I think that's worth addressing in terms of play style using assets because what I'm finding is that the better the player, the more apt they are to just trash everything. And that goes into two things: A, being aggressive enough to trash it, and B, building things in your deck to get the money or imp or something to do it. Because I think that's just kind of where the meta is right now. There's so many high priority assets and upgrades that need to get trashed. Um, so in response to that, if things are so become so powerful when they're not trashed, then I think you really have to look at, can I protect them? And a lot of that depends, of course, if you get a draw that allows you to do that. It depends also on if the runner's having a tendency to trash things. But I think, like I said, good players will run things. And like I love, like one play I like to do in my Glacier deck is I play with ice walls now, and I put an ice wall in front of a pad campaign or an Eve campaign or daily business show, and maybe advance it once or twice if they're playing Corroder, just to make it that much more of a tax for them to go get stuff. Or maybe like, I have a fast advanced deck I'm playing now, like a next bronze or a next silver at 2 or 3 becomes pretty annoying for them to want to go trash an Eve campaign or a daily business show. And if they leave that stuff out, it just becomes brutal. So yeah, I think if you can protect it, it's really awesome. But a lot of times it's hard to. But certainly, if you can, and you can, as a result, it stays on the table for almost the whole game, it's a great play.
Yeah, I want to touch on that. I think most corps you really do have to protect your assets, but if you have a really good corp ID like Neurothub or Replicating Perfection, you can kind of just go sideways without, protecting them because it's not even worth it for the runner to trash all of those assets most of the time when they have that extra ability that makes the assets more worth it
Yeah, it's a
to go
little bit
sideways.
of protection built into your identity.
Yeah, and then the other identities usually you have to do more to protect it because, like Greg said, a good runner is going to trash most of the assets that are going to give you a lot over the course of a game. So,
Uh, Um, let's swing the conversation here into two of some of my favorite assets. These are the executives. We have Chairman Hero and Director Haas. Now, these are ones that if the runner can trash them, they're worth 2 points. Now, I don't see a lot of them used ever, so I just wanted to know how you guys feel about running. Like, okay, so Chairman Hero, you know, the runner's maximum hand size is reduced by 2. He has a good res cost at 2, and he's 6 to trash. And then again, we have Director Haas, which adds 1 additional click to spend on your turn, 5 trash cost, 3 to res. The reason why I'm starting to look at these cards now is because of conversations I've had with a buddy of mine, TPS Viper, about the new self-destruct that has come out now. Self-destruct is a upgrade, but I think it works really well to protect some of these assets like this that are points to the runner when they go to trash it. So because it's a fast effect, I can kill my own executive before you can even steal it, plus I'm doing a trace plus net damage. So thoughts on now running Chairman Hero, Director Haas? You guys looking at these cards now, or is it too much to put them in and now you have to add self-destruct to protect them?
I had never even considered the self-destruct idea. I think that's kind of cool. TPS was always pretty creative with how he rigs up decks, and he's a pretty good player, so you never know what he's going to come up with. But no, I think that's really interesting. But to me, the drawback of the executives has never been what they do in play. It's what they do when they're not in play, which is they sit there as a liability in your R&D or in your hand if you can't get them into play. Granted, there's cards like maybe interns where if you can get them into your archives yourself and then put them in when you need them, that's a different way to play around it. But now you're looking at self-destruct, and yeah, you're looking at a few deck slots to make this work. But hey, does that mean that there's not room for creativity to do something like that? Maybe there is. I think Chairman Hero seems to be the one with maybe the most viability. Simply for the fact that not every runner is going to check all remotes, and maybe you can have it sit there and then you res it right at the end of their turn and then hit them with a Ronin or something. I mean, it seems like that has some viability, but there is a huge risk to playing it, and you're already at risk with your agenda density, and all you're doing is giving the runner more opportunities to take those points. I mean, so I don't know that the combo is going to fire enough to justify, you're going to win enough to make that work versus losing having it or never having the combo fire at all, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think they're both at home where they need to be. Like, I don't really see you splashing or putting these out of faction. Director Haas, seems to be fit in with that Byroid, get an extra click style, and Jinteki wants to reduce hand size. So I don't see them out of faction because that's a lot to move out of faction there, especially this day and age. Joe, what's your take on these two executives, or these two either by themselves or with the self-destruct combo?
I think Greg had a good point that the worst part about playing these is them getting trashed out of centrals, and you can't do anything about it, so you can't even get the self-destruct to work for you. I think one thing, though, to look out for is Industrial Genomics might be able to play Chairman Hero a little safer.
Yeah, I've played a couple games with that in my testing with that ID. I do have a problem keeping him on the table, though, even
yeah, but it's just the thought he might be he might be more viable in that ID, and he's definitely the more viable out of the two, just because his low res cost and everything, really high trash costs. So
yeah. I do like it already starts at a 6, and when you're adding stuff, but I found with these cards, I'm never putting more than one copy in my deck, and then it's hit or miss if I'm gonna see it.
Right.
I've ran the Industrial Genomics with Chairman Hero. Some games don't see him at all. Like, he's just buried, and just by chance. And some games I have him in hand, and I can't get him on the table because I'm doing some other stuff, and then I just give up and trash him myself just to protect it. But I think he's a very interesting play, especially in that identity.
Yeah, I mean, the timing of it is kind of goofy because it's only going to work when um, basically the runner had an opportunity to trash it on the table all turn, unless they like hit an architect or something and you get it in. But generally, it's going to be at least vulnerable for a turn before it works because it's only they discard it. The runner discards at the end of their turn, so you need to res Chairman Hero at the end of their turn essentially to make it work.
So
So it already has.
is that the timing you think for it? Like, isn't it at the end of their turn? Like, if they've already discarded, and most people will be like, "Oh, end of your turn, I'm gonna res this pad," and that's after they're like, or while they're discarding.
No, I'm gonna res it while their fourth click is resolving.
Yeah, yeah. Because just so the people out there, that want to try this, you really got to watch your timing on that. Um, you obviously don't want to res it on your turn because then it just becomes pretty much a target. So Joe, any other assets that are sticking out for you these days?
Um, I think Sundew and Mental Health Clinic are still really popular, as they should be in RP. Those are really relevant. In terms of like newer assets that have come out, I don't know, I'd have to look at the cards again. But definitely Daily Business Show, that one is huge. It's going to see a lot of play.
So you mentioned Mental Health Clinic, and um, are you like this one sits weird for me. It sits weird in a Jinteki deck that, I think as soon as this comes up, people know you're not trying for the kill.
Well, you don't have to try for the kill. I can tell you what my cards are and just win with how taxing it is. That's the thing. And even if you can use it if you still want to go for a kill, because, I mean, you make their hand size bigger, but you play Komenus with it, and so they don't want to keep their hand size at 7 or whatever, because it's going to cost them too much. And so when they kind of keep their hand size lower to deal with the Komenu attacks, then if you are running the snares or the feetals, that could catch them off guard.
Yeah, I mean, you're just because their hand size is increased by 1 doesn't mean they're,
Doesn't mean they want that many cards in their hand.
or they're drawing up to that amount. Is this something you'd play outside of Jinteki? Have you experimented with this, you guys?
Back when Near Earth Hub first was released, I tried Mental Health Clinic in Near Earth Hub, like with pads and stuff, but it's not worth it to use the influence on that. So I really don't think it should be splashed anywhere at 2 influence. It's not worth it.
You might as well just go with the pad campaigns at
Yeah.
that point.
Definitely.
What about another new one we saw was the executive boot camp. You guys liking this one?
I think it's a cool card. I think it's really versatile. It fits the whole asset theme that's been kind of coming out. It allows you a little bit of flexibility. And going back to like Chairman Hero, maybe it allows you to play a card like Chairman Hero because you can go get it in the bottom of your deck and install it when you need it. So it's a cool card, zero res cost, and then it helps you in a couple different ways. And I think the 3 trash cost is reasonable. So I think it's a neat card. It's balanced. It's not over powerful. It's not overwhelmingly powerful, but it's useful.
I love the fact that it's double use again. Like it goes back to, I always say with Jackson Howard, these cards that can do 2 things, right? So when your turn begins, you may res a card lowering the cost by 1, and then you also have the search feature of this. I think this card is beautiful where it needs to be. 1 influence, it really lets you open up and experiment in a lot of builds, especially while we're talking about assets and building your deck around assets. There's nothing worse than not getting the asset you need at the right time.
Yeah, and I think another thing, I know we're not supposed to talk about the upcoming cards, but it is a good counter to, I think Valencia is the Bad Publicity runner. So with the blackmail thing that might be coming out, like it's a good counter to that at one influence. If that sees a lot of play in your meta, you have a card that you can put in that's a good card and it can stop that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally, totally right there, Joe. We don't really. What is there? There's only 3 ways that you can res now. Ice that is not on your turn, or without the runner interacting with it. We have Byroid, Efficiency, Oversight, and Executive Boot Camp. I can't think of anything else. Is there?
Priority requisition.
Oh yeah, that's scoring.
Shoot the moon.
Yeah. So there's
Shoot the moon for
Yeah, but
MBN.
out of all those cards, though, Executive Bootcamp is one that it could actually just be useful in most decks. So it's like the other cards are, you're playing Oversight if you're playing Blue Sun with Curtain Walls,
Yeah, this gives you a little better out of faction influence value defense.
Yeah, like the 1 influence cost on it. It's good.
Greg, anything else that you want to hit up for assets here? What do you got in mind?
Well, I think let's just talk about it because it's a thing.
Are you seeing it in the chat?
Yeah, I mean, IT department and Ben had some pretty strong words to say about it. I've had some pretty strong words to say about it on the StimHack forum.
Well, let's
And
put it on camera. This makes it.
yeah, well, okay. I mean, I'll keep it. I don't want to get too crazy on it, but here's what the bottom line with me in this card. The confusion with it, of course, was that it came out, and basically the way that the counters work were a little confusing, where the strength of the IT would basically compound every single turn. And I'm not going to go into the details. You can go on the threads and get all the formulas of how this card works or whatever. But essentially, it's not quite as powerful as we originally thought it was. And I'll say this. It does make it a little bit more manageable. The card isn't unbeatable. The card isn't overpowered in the sense that if you play it, you're going to win every time because of this card. But what it does, more so than any other card in the game, is it warps the balance of the game at an exponential rate faster than anything. In other words, once this card hits the table, if you can't trash it and the board is set up, it's game over. And it's not just game over for the runner, it is a slow, agonizing, painful death where the runner literally can't do anything except for sit there and wait for the corp to win. And
just to get ahead of the questions that might pop up down below in the comments, do you just want to explain how the math works? Just the official, what we have ruling.
yeah, okay. So the final result of the card is, let's say you have 3 counters on IT department, and you take 1 counter off and you put it on a piece of ice. That counter, because there was 3 when you put it on the piece of ice, we'll give it a boost of 3 strength. Now, let's say you put a second counter on that piece of ice. What happens now is both counters that you put on the ice become the value of what was left on IT department. In this case, it's 2. So now you have 2 counters at the value of 2. What we thought before is that you get the value of 3, and then you also got the full value of the next card. So it'd be 3, 2, 1, etc. So if you were to put all 3 counters on a piece of ice, you would have a boost of 6. But now the actual ruling would be if you put all 3 counters on the piece of ice, the last counter would make every counter you put on there worth 1. So at the end, it would be plus 3. That sounds really confusing. If you didn't follow that, it's all texted out. But it does nerf it a little bit, especially early in the sequence of the IT department. It still gets to a point where once there's like 6, 7, 8 counters on it, it's absolutely absurd. And that's what you can't afford to let the corp do, is get to the point where it has 5, 6, 7, or 7, 8 counters on it. The problem is that with cards like interns and other things available, if the corp has the board state already in play, you get that card in place, protected, or maybe, they go trash it once like they need to the first time, but they can't run it again. Next turn, they interns it right back into place. Game over. And to me, that's a horrible card for the game where it just can automatically win you games and shape it, warp the game so fast. That being said, I know everyone, there's different arguments about, oh, Count Siphon, Sansan, Astro, they all do the same thing. Not really. It still takes a fair amount of, randomness to draw maybe the cards you need. Even fast track, you still have to draw a fast track to get a card to biotic it. Like, you still need to get these combo pieces. Where IT department, once it's in play, there's absolutely nothing you can do. Period. End of story. And to absolutely eradicate competition in a game, which is why I sat down to play this thing, was to compete with somebody, makes it absolutely lame in my opinion. That's
Strong words from Wisconsin.
well, that's my rant on it. I mean, it's a competitive game, and if you eliminate competition, I think it ruins a game. Not that it can't be beat, like I said, but it's just really annoying once it's out there.
I'll touch on it a little bit.
Yeah, it looked like you were settling in there for a long haul. You knew it was coming.
Yeah, so I don't know. I think the card is just so confusing, and cards like that shouldn't be in the game, whether or not it's overpowered or whatever. It's just like how confusing this card is, and how many headaches are going to be caused at tournaments when casual players are playing against this card or with the card or whatever. I don't know. I don't like that in Netrunner. It should be just a simple game. I haven't really played with it or against it, so I don't know how good it is, but it definitely seems like a card that I wouldn't want to play with, because it just draws the game out really long and takes forever to win, and it's inevitable what's going to happen if you get that running. So that just seems pretty boring to me. That's all I really got to say about the card.
But would you avoid it though? Then, like, I know you say you don't want to play it, but do you find yourself forced to play these cards because you don't want to be at a disadvantage behind everybody else that's playing it?
Well, I don't think it's actually going to be good enough to play. Like, obviously, if it's the best card in the game, I'd play it if I want to win, but I don't think it's going to be that much of an impact. What's the influence on it?
One.
I don't know. I don't know if it'll be that much of an impact that, I find myself hating myself for, like, wanting to play it to win. I don't think it's going to be that powerful.
I just really hope that they come out with the new FAQ before Store Championships hit, because this thing here is going to cause tournament judges headaches and arguments for those people because you shouldn't have to go into forums and read 100 posts and threads like that to get a clear definition of what the card does. And this card came out with a lot of confusion, and I just hope they can get an official FFG ruling on it before tournament season really kicks off.
Yeah, I'm sure they'll do that. I mean, they really have to with this card.
I don't think there's really...
I mean, I hope they would. I don't know.
I don't really have anything else to say to it, but it's good. I mean, right now it's although I haven't really... I think a lot of people are avoiding it because of the confusion. But it has potential to be very powerful in one of the right builds. But it also, if you're really relying on this card and it gets imped or trashed quickly and you can't get set up properly, then, the linchpin probably got pulled from your deck.
Yeah, I mean, it has vulnerabilities, but it's, like I said, it's just what it does to the game state. It breaks the game, kind of. Not kind of. It does break.
Like exponentially gets better as you put more counters on it, and that's not. There's no cards that get exponentially better like that. I don't think.
Apparently, we've been corrected, Joe. It's quadratically, not exponentially.
Well, whatever. Yeah, I'm not smart enough.
No, I know, man. I know. We have some precise people in our audience.
What? What else you got going on for assets these days, Greg?
Well, I want to touch on Turtlebacks.
Yeah,
Um,
that's been an interesting one.
and it's another one of those cards that sits there at 4 trash costs, and you know that they're probably going to play a whole bunch more assets, and they get two on the table, and now you're getting two per pop, and it's like what Joe was saying with Near Earth Hub, it's the same principle where you're getting value for an install. That's what's been so strong about HB this whole time is you get value for something you're going to do anyway. Turtlebacks does that. Of course, it's not inherent in an ID like Near Earth Hub or HB, but nonetheless, you get this on the table. I mean, I don't have a lot of experience with this card, but I have a couple games now, and I'm playing it actually in a HB Fast Advance style deck with Sands and Daily Business Show, Jackson, Pad Campaign, a whole bunch of or three encryption protocols. So a whole bunch of stuff to put on the table, and then you get Turtlebacks. So it's that same principle of a million things the corp needs to trash, and it's going to cost them a lot to do it. Um, so I think it gives you that it gives you some synergy in wanting to play more assets, and plus that um, one influence you can splash it. And I think what's cool about this card too, and I think it's like cards like Turtlebacks, maybe even diversified portfolio, they're opening up diversity in how you can make money. Like you don't necessarily have to play hedge fund or sweeps week or whatever in decks now. Like there's variety, and as long as you have a strategy that you can rely on, I think cards like Turtlebacks and Asset Econ or whatever give you variation in how you can build decks.
Yeah,
I don't know about that statement, Greg. I don't know about that.
Which one?
Don't play hedge fund and sweeps week.
It
Pretty
depends.
crazy.
It depends.
Just
You
saying.
don't need to if you build it in.
Yeah, but you do just because of the first turn early game advantage you get out of it. Uh,
this is the Church of Nord, and he's just preaching.
I
I'll
mean,
accept
it's
it. I'll
it's a play
accept it.
style thing, and not saying that you can't play hedge fund, but you play cheap ice, and you don't need necessarily a ton of credits to get stuff rezzed. But yeah, I mean, whatever. We all know how good hedge fund is, but what my point is that I think we're seeing new avenues where it's not like, oh, you have to play these cards.
What I really like about Turtlebacks, and I've played around with it myself too quite a bit, is if you want a indication that FFG wants you to play horizontal, this is it right here. Gain one whenever you create a server. It's a nice trash cost at 4. It's a low res, and it's also low on the influence. Now, I know they couldn't make this neutral because I think that would be just a little too much, so they, stick it in Jinteki, and you're able to move it to another faction if you so want to, because one is reasonable. One's reasonable to experiment with. Um, let's touch on what you guys think about this compared to Pad. We had Justin's in the chat, and he's saying Turtlebacks has the same res and trash as Pad. Is this worse though?
Um, it's different. Like, I mean, they work together. I mean, Turtlebacks is a combo card. Pad can work on its own. So, in that sense, it's limited. The flip side of it, the balance of it in that sense is that you have two on the table, and all of a sudden it becomes like a burst card because there aren't too many things in the game where you can like you have two Turtlebacks on the table, and then you install two things. That's 4 credit burst plus you got two installed. So that's really powerful. I mean, it's sort of a card that it just gets more and more powerful as it the longer it stays in the game. I guess Pad's the same way in that sense, but I don't know. They're very different. I don't know that they can really be compared because you kind of need Pad if you're playing Turtlebacks. So I don't know. That's a good question though.
one is feeding the other, right?
Yeah. But it's the fact that turtlebacks can become kind of like bursty and like allows you to get compound your actions where you can do multiple things at the same time. I think that's its real strength.
Yeah, I don't know if it's the new hotness or any other reason, but I'm more drawn to turtlebacks this day than I am pad right now. Joe, what are you? What's your take on this guy?
Well, I think it really depends on how many assets you put in your deck. I mean, if you're playing turtlebacks, you're playing a deck full of assets to make it worth it. So you just got to play a lot of assets. You got to be installing at least one new server a turn to make it worth it over pad.
Do you think that you're putting this in your deck as well as diversified portfolio, or should you just have one or the other because deck space could be tight?
I think you could play both. I mean, if you're playing like super horizontal, it wouldn't be bad to play a diversified portfolio as well.
Yeah, I think it depends. I mean, with econ, I think you just need to have like a strategy and like enough cards to make sure you have yourself covered. Um, so yeah, I think you can make it work.
Cool. Let's do just we'll go through the list of all the stuff I've marked up here, and then we'll see where we're at. So after turtlebacks, we come to Sundew. I think we've already really talked about what you can do with Sundew. We all know that it's replicating perfection. It was pretty much the at its pinnacle in there. You guys, anyone seen it outside of RP?
No, I don't think so.
Or played well outside of RP?
It's too hard to make it worth it, I think.
I saw it in genomics, where it was really annoying to trash, and they had
Yeah, that
three
makes
ships in their
that makes
archives.
sense.
This is the only other place that I've played it. I've never taken it out of Jinteki.
Yeah, I mean it might be decent in a deck if you have hostile infrastructures running, but even then it's vulnerable. So I think the fact that it's a 2 trash cost makes it such an easy target. Um, but if you can up the trash cost with encryption protocol or protect it, then sure, maybe it's reasonable. But in general, it's like it's too hard to reliably protect assets that like you don't usually want to play assets you absolutely have to protect. Like daily business show, pad campaign, a lot of times you don't have to protect them. Sundew you will almost always have to protect with either a higher trash cost or ice.
Yeah, and if you've watched a lot of Dan's games on the FFG streams from Worlds, he was protecting his Sundews all the time. I didn't see them dangling out there.
No, I mean it's yeah, they're so flimsy and but their upside is so tremendous that it's absolutely worth it to be patient to get them in when you know you can protect them because once they're in, they're going to yield you big time.
Yeah, I think we've all had our share of play with this card, and nothing else to say. One we haven't touched on yet is Shell Corporation. This got some buzz when it first popped out. 2 res, 3 trash, and this is the Katie Jones style. Cotty, sorry for you purists out there. Cotty, this is the corp Cotty Jones.
Well, it is an upgrade, but we can talk about it. That's what makes it important.
Yeah, this was in here from Mr. Greg's request. Even though this was an upgrade, he thought it was an important enough with the theme.
Yeah, I think it's good to talk about this card.
What are your thoughts on it, Joe?
I mean, it's interesting. I don't know if it will really work that well against good runners. I guess you mostly want to play it in Jinteki because you put it on a server with Psychic Field or Snare, and so you start clicking it for credits, and if they run it, they're going to lose a lot of cards. That's like the most obvious example of using it, I think. Um, but I mean, you just run it with 3 cards in hand, so you don't die, but you lose the minimum to Psychic Field once they click it up to 6 or 9, and it's not that bad of a trade as for the runner. So I don't know if it's a very good source of reliable econ.
I'm reminded of that, like the old Bugs Bunny cartoons with the carrot in the box and with a stick propped up. It's like, the runner goes in, thinks he's gonna trash this, and then you caught him. Um,
Yeah.
Hmm.
and I think I'm in the same boat as you, Joe, with this. Like, I I looked at this card long and hard, but I just don't have room right now for it. I think it's too much dead weight in a deck to really sit there and get good use out of it. Like, if you're putting it in just to be like, oh, I'm gonna bait the runner on a snare with this because it's gonna get up so much, nobody's gonna really give a care.
Yeah, and if you look at it like, you can't even ever click it up to 6 credits because you res it for 2, you put 3 on it, and then you put 6 on it, and then if it gets trashed, you lost 3 clicks and 2 credits or something like that. That's just horrible for you. That's anti-economy. So you have to just put 3 on it and take 3 off, and you have to just like say, is it worth it to use deck slots on a card that just does that? I don't know, and that can get trashed still.
Almost right now, I would rather take my turn with a miner, or
Right.
take my chances mining rather than this. I'd rather use a whole turn rather than, because like you bring up a great point saying that something like this here, you click it twice, you've wasted your 2 clicks. If as soon as it gets trashed, you can't get that back. And right in the corporation, you only have 3 clicks to do. And usually, like this day and age, you need to be really doing something because the runners are, aggressive. Not many runners are sitting back, casually rig building, and then picking and choosing where they're going to go in.
Yeah, and I think it is important to mention though that it being an upgrade, it is a very interesting card. We haven't seen cards like this where it's an upgrade that is economy for the corporation. So it is very interesting, and I'm sure some people put it in their decks and get some value out of it. So we'll
Yeah,
see.
it pairs well with assets. Greg, over to you for your final
Yeah.
thoughts here.
I've seen it best used in personal evolution decks, as Joe mentioned, and I play it in mine. I think where it can really shine is if you put it on like a brain, or not a brain trust, cerebral overrider with a couple
Oh
of
yeah,
benefits on it. Because then it's really like lose lose. Because I'll gladly let them come trash however many credits are on it if I can give them 2 brain damage, or maybe I'm even motioned it, so maybe
right.
I can get 3 brain damage. Additionally, you can get tricky with it. Like maybe you motion out a Philotic and then drop upgrades on it. Um, so it's a unique way of bluffing. I also play Hokusai grids in mine, so a lot of times people might think, oh, that's a Hokusai grid, and now they're having to account for another net damage before they run. So, and then like Joe said, I think in hindsight, like, or not even in hindsight, but on analyzing this card, I think generally the runner is correct to go trash it, even if it's a psychic field and they lose their hand. Once it's at like 6 to 9 credits, unless the corp has like a runaway econ effect going on, I think it's absolutely worth it to get in there and trash it, even to get a psychic field blasted on you. Because if you can keep them below snare range or keep them crippled to advancing Ronins or whatever their strategy is, you can keep the Jinteki strategy at bay that way. But nonetheless, if it's not run, and a lot of times it isn't, a lot of runners won't run it. Um, you can win games with it. Just simply, and I mean, that might be overstating it, but you can get a huge economic lift with it.
Yeah, you're gonna have to just come in at the right time.
But even if you do 3 at a time, like that's not horrible if it stays on the table.
Yeah, no, it's an interesting card. I haven't tested it enough to really know.
But it's three at a time is like it has to sit there a turn,
Right.
right? And that's not as easy to do with the corp as it is the runner.
Yeah, I totally agree. So you have to protect it.
Um, Next up, we already talked about server diagnostics, underused. I would like to see somebody really do something with this card. We did have a comment that hit up the video, the deck breakdown that Greg, you and I did for the last episode, and some guy was commenting about using this card in a deck style like that MBN one because it's already low ice. But I don't know. So the low trash there is hurting since it costs you more to res than it does them to trash. I don't know. I don't think it's not. It's not a go-to.
Yeah, we kind of covered this card. It's weak for that reason. I mean, you have to have a lot of assets on the board already to make this not be a high priority target, and that's hard to get to that point.
Sorry, someone have something else to say there? Or
I didn't say anything.
Earbuds just clip. Private contracts up next. This one has kind of died out a little for me around my area-ish. I don't know if are you guys still seeing private contracts pop up? I mean, this used to be there when it came out in the early days when the corp didn't really have much money-making cards. But now that we have sweeps and things like that, the Jinteki with celebrity gifts and things, this kind of got put on the shelf.
Yeah, it used to be better when the corpse needed the econ and it protected against account siphon when it was really good. But nowadays I think it can be used in Blue Sun decently because you can always pull it back to your hand after using almost all of the credits off of it. So it's a decent Blue Sun card, but other than that I wouldn't play it.
Yeah, I think it's the fact that it's click intensive makes it limited. So like I originally when I built a near Earth deck, I had private contracts and marked accounts, but that's just way too much clicking for econ. So I have pretty much always preferred trickle econ to click econ, because I can save that time. And that's the biggest drawback for me with this card is the time it takes to make the money. But I mean, it's a nice card. The fact that it's like a slow card, but the fact that it costs 5 to trash is like, I don't know. The fact that it's so bad almost makes the runner not want to trash it.
Yeah, I think it's correct to just not trash it. But it's,
because it's so slow, but
yeah.
So like if the runner doesn't trash it and you get all the value on the card, then yeah, it's a decent card, but it is just slow.
Yeah, it's decent economy at best. In Blue Sun though, you pull it back, you get the credits back. It's okay.
Yeah, Ben was saying that Blue Sun's the only place that he's seen it used as well, and I think that's the area that it makes the most sense, since you're basically just reloading it. But the click for 2, it does. There are better ways to make bank now than that guy. Next up was the almighty pad. Came out at the beginning of our Netrunner life cycle, and now it's making its little comeback with Near Earth Hub. Great card, great res to trash balance there. I don't think there's really anything else to say about pad campaign unless you guys want to throw something quick.
I just love this card, man. This is like
I want to say the balance of this
wall of static of assets.
Yeah, the balance of this card is pretty good because it was good in the beginning when the core set came out and there was nothing else, and it's survived to this day. So I mean, as a source of econ cards kind of go out of balance quicker.
The fact that it never dies, if you can protect it and the runner doesn't trash it, it literally is the best econ card in the game. If you're playing, if the game goes 10, 15 turns
Yeah.
It's ridiculous how good it is.
Hmm. And especially like when you think about what the res cost actually is, right? Like, um, I to me a pad is a one res, right?
Right.
Like nobody really puts this pad down and then right away they're like, I'm gonna spend two to res it. No, every time it's the end of your player's turn, the start of your turn, you pay two, you get the one back. You know, I mean,
Unless it's Leela, you might res it early just to make sure it stays on the table.
touche, touche. You always got to come in with the cliff note. Um, it's great. Do you guys? Why do you think pad dipped then? Just going back to pad quickly. Why do you think it went away for a bit? You think it's just experimentation, or people just got caught up in new hotness?
I think it's kind of what we started the whole show with. Like, assets were a little bit of a liability because they were hard to protect.
Yeah, I just like to
Uh,
come full circle just to show that we are making good points and valid points at that.
Absolutely. No, I think the fact that the whole asset that you can dilute pad campaign with so many other like quote better assets, it makes it a lesser priority to trash. So you're getting a lot more value from pad campaign than
Yeah.
I think seeing that back in the day.
To me, it was just a style change. I think people thought that they needed burst economy because the key to winning as a corporation was fast advance, and all I had to do was fast advance, advance, advance. And now people, are not scared to play a I don't want to say slower because you can still get glaciers that are, you know, that move quick, but people are playing a taxing game, right? And pad will, force the runner to think about trashing it.
Yeah, I'm gonna
Yeah,
go back
oh
to what
yeah.
I I'm gonna go
Oh, go
back to what
ahead.
I said earlier. I think a lot of the reasons why we're seeing so many assets now is that Nearth Hub and replicating perfection are very prevalent in the current meta. Um, and so pad is just so good in those decks where
Hmm.
it's valuable to play it and the runner can't trash it. So that's a big reason why we're seeing so many of these assets come back because of Nearth Hub coming out and replicating perfection being very good.
Yeah, and Ben makes a great point with enhanced login protocol. When I rebuilt my Glacier deck and put enhanced login protocol, the first thing I did was took out restructure and put in pad campaign because it's so much more of a pain in the butt to trash it with having to pay 2 clicks.
I know it's an upgrade, but man, that it still bugs me that strong box is low trash.
Yeah.
Um, mining corp. Every once in a while, you see a deck that's still mining, but have we just seen better options with this now because of the low trash?
Yeah, I think mostly just better options.
I mean, I don't think I'm not down on the mining corp. I just think you have to like understand its inherent weakness, which is, I mean, it's a ridiculous bargain in terms of what you get for a buck resing it in 3 clicks. It's insane. But the vulnerability, of course, is that it just gets plucked out of R&D or HQ and
Mm-hmm.
it's worthless practically. So, I mean, it's a high risk, high reward card, and if you can protect it, it's a monster. But I don't know that it's like you just need a deck to support it. That's all. Like you need hard ETR ice. It doesn't really work in Bioroid decks or decks where it's easy to break ice and get through. Like you need hard ETR ice that you can protect it early and make a bunch of bank.
Agreed. I don't think anyone's downplaying it. It's just when you need money, and if you're putting this in there in your deck for money, it's hard to count on that you're going to be able to play this 100% of the time.
Yeah, I agree.
Um, Marked accounts we did touch on a bit already. I mean, 0 to res, 5 to trash. I think it's great. I don't really think there's anything else to say about marked that we haven't already touched on. You guys agree?
Yeah.
Um, Next up is Mr. Jackson. Um, I don't think anyone's
Yeah, we
gonna.
haven't talked about him because
Yeah,
he's just been the best forever.
I don't think. I don't think there's anything really to touch on here, but it wouldn't be an asset show if we didn't talk about one of the best assets in the game. Um, Really weird though that this is one of the ones that most people will play unprotected, and that's all I can touch on with Jackson. He's good, very little ice protection over top of him. And
Yeah,
he'll be
I mean, Jackson is a staple of the game. It's funny because, like, in terms of the power balance of the game, Jackson Howard is probably the most powerful card in the game. I mean, in terms of what he does, I don't know. That's my opinion. It's certainly one of the most powerful cards in the game, more powerful than IT department, but it doesn't ruin the game. It doesn't like break the game, and I don't know, I guess not that I want to beat a dead horse with IT department, but I don't think that power and playability are necessarily always interrelated. Like sometimes you need high powerful cards just to make the game work, but sometimes even like medium powered cards can break a game. So I just think it's an interesting comparison where you look at Jackson, which is so strong, but makes the game incredibly better for what it does, versus lesser powerful cards that in fact break it.
Yeah, Jackson Howard is one of the most game-changing cards. It's just it completely changed the power level of the corpse and what they could do. Being able to get rid of a bad hand and then bring the agendas back, it just completely changes corp play in the game.
Yeah, I agreed. This card is so powerful. It didn't break the game. It touches on something that you said before, Greg, in IT department. It just keeps things competitive. I mean, nobody wants to play a 2-minute game of Netrunner because the guy's flooded with agendas, right? So he lets you do that quick switcheroo. So we already talked about IT department. I'll just show it one more time because apparently Greg loves it. One we didn't really touch on much at all. It was mentioned here and there. Hostile infrastructure. This card is it's interesting. I know it. So it makes every asset a little better, but by itself, obviously, it's not really doing much other than sapping you for 5 credits. I think it's very high res, but
It is.
it's probably needed because I mean it can be dangerous, right?
I think it could be used in industrial genomics. That's kind of the idea I see this being put in, where you're playing a whole bunch of assets and stuff, and the corp wants to trash them.
Mm-hmm.
Or the runner, I'm sorry.
I've been playing it in my personal evolution deck, and um, it's an interesting card. And the challenge with it is the 5 res cost for sure, because like, and of course the timing of it, because you don't always draw it early, or if you do draw it early, you don't necessarily always have the luxury of being able to res it. Um, but it does create a lot of interesting pressure. Like one thing that is interesting is if the corp parasites a piece of ice, this also takes action. So it has different uses in that sense. Unfortunately, Noise's ability says the corp trashes a card when you install a virus.
Yeah.
Otherwise, that would be pretty
No,
amazing.
it says the runner.
Yeah.
The runner
No, 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 that's
trashes.
what I'm saying. If Noise's ability said the runner trashed the corpse, that would be insane. But
Yeah.
unfortunately,
Yeah,
Noise's ability says the corp trashes it. So you're safe there, I guess, with Noise. But either way, Parasite, it's a nice Parasite counter.
Yeah, I didn't really
Um,
think of that parasite move too. That was a good
yeah,
good
so
thinking
I mean,
point.
I like it in PE because it's like now they don't want to trash your ice, they don't want to trash your assets, and they don't want to steal agendas. They kind of get punished for everything they do. But to me, it's not been a bad card. It seems balanced. Where when it's up, it's pretty good. but it is a little bit hard to get up and keep up. Um, so in that sense, it's a little bit limited. Yeah, hey, yuck it up. Come on now. We're all grown adults. Uh, but anyway, so that's my 2 cents on it. I think it's decent, and it can be okay, but it's a little hard to protect.
Yeah, I found the same along the same lines. It really needs to be in a right build. I don't know. Okay, so spoiler alert: our next episode, we're going to talk about the new Jinteki, the genomics, and I'm playing that heavily right now. This was one of the cards that I cut from my genomics deck. The reason behind it is because I found that it wasn't doing anything. I was spending 5 to res this up, and when I already have like 4 or 5 cards in my archives, adding to the trash cost, people weren't trashing things anyway when they saw it.
Yeah.
The only time though it did work well is when they would run the archives, everything flipped up. So then I was still applying, like, I was still able to get value if they were going to then run and trash some of those assets that I needed. It was still doing work then. But I didn't know if I needed one or the other. And that, I don't want to make a solid claim to that right now because I'm still testing out various versions of the deck, but it's just something I noticed. Anything else you guys want to add to Hostile? Mental health clinic. We kind of touched that a little bit. It's a great res to trash ratio there. Nothing really else to say about that, huh?
Sounds good.
What about the Grindle refinery? Moving right along. This is a very interesting money-making one in Wayland that I don't see as much as I used to when it first came out. You guys?
I think the allure of Grendel Refinery is the fact that you advance it and then induce a run. And doing it with, it's kind of a win-win for the corp if you have like a Glacier server built and then you install advance. If the runner runs it and trashes it, it's a win because they spent so much money to get there and trash it. But if they don't run it, it's a win because you make a whole bunch of money. So I think that's the real allure of Grendel Refinery, and it can, I mean, if you do get a chance to fire it with like 4 counters, that's really strong. I mean, 16 credits is quite good for, I guess it took 5 clicks to do all that, but 5 clicks for 16 credits, that's a decent return.
Yeah, no, I've seen it used in one turn as well, where it's already installed when the turn starts. Someone will advance twice, res, and then, on their third to trash, gaining 8. So you're getting a little bit more than a minor. But, I mean, yeah, if you can, anything more than, 2, 3 advancements, this thing makes you money. But Wayland never really had a problem making money before, so it's either hit or miss. Joe, you got some love for the refinery?
Well, it's the downside is that it's like any other trap, really. It's hard to really use effectively because when you advance it and try to bluff it as an agenda, if you know the runner can get in, they're probably not going to go and grab it. So, I mean, it's okay to just click it up 5 times and take the money off. It's a decent card, but probably better options in most corp decks these days.
I mean, I think Ben makes a good point that we see better use for it out of faction than in faction. Especially, he's saying that he just doesn't feel it's good enough to fit into a Blue Sun build. I don't like the fact that it's trash to use, but I guess that balances it out. Um, Greg, you already talked about your love for the fine Lady Eve. Um, she's still solid at 5 for 5 in HB decks these days.
Oh yeah, evil. I think Eve is again one of those staple cards that's extremely well balanced and just a great card for the corporation to put a lot of pressure on the runner and worth protecting if you think the runner's going to trash it. Worth protecting with a light piece of ice because once it's protected lightly, once it's going to cost like 8-9 credits to go trash, runners will be very reluctant to do that.
Yeah, Joe, what do you an Eve or an Adonis guy?
I think Adonis is better, but they're both good assets. Definitely staples of HB.
Yeah, these these cards will be around for a while. Drip economy at its finest. Executive boot camp we touched on. You know, everyone's giving it thumbs up here. Dedicated response team. I don't really think we're going to talk about this one that much. It has its uses, and I've you know, I should have said it at the beginning of the show, but we're really talking about money making and assets that are doing something. I left all the traps out, so you might have noticed there's no snares, shocks, Ronins, cerebrals. We didn't get into those things, so we're just going to pass by dedicated response. It was just in here just in case it came up. Director Haas and Chairman Hero, we've all set our pieces on those. Daily Business Show, it was brought up in conversation. Do you guys want to say anything else about Daily Business Show?
Well, if the runner doesn't... Oh, go ahead.
That's it. It makes all decks better. For one influence, it's an easy justification to put it in almost every single deck.
If the runner doesn't trash it, you'll win the game, probably.
It's really interesting. I think the only thing that's going to compete with this is what was that stupid card that you got me in draft with showing off or something? Or
when you access off the bottom.
Yeah, right. So I mean, if you're sitting there burying your agendas at the bottom, and then someone has multi-access and then does a show off, I mean that's the only going to like downfall. But
yeah, that's actually
that's interesting though, because it could happen.
Yeah,
you know?
I think that's a great counter to Daily Business Show, actually.
But I mean, I think it's important to note that this triggers off your mandatory draw, right? So you're not doing.
So you always get use out of it.
Yeah. You know, guys, if you're out there in bad publicity land and you're not using this card, this should almost be like your Jackson Howard and your free Mr. Lee here. You know, there's no reason not to have this in a deck.
I mean, it here. Let me just explain something quick as to why I think it's so good. I think this is decent conversation here. Like you can get away with thinning your deck out, so to speak. Like maybe you can justify playing this over a piece of ice or two because this is going to get you that piece of ice or two when you really need it, even if you're playing one or two less. Like the fact that you're seeing 2 cards every single turn gives you so much flexibility for what you need at any given time that it almost opens up deck slots for you in that sense. It's just insane. It's just such a good card for the corp. Where in a game of hidden information, where you're setting up, creating this landscape with limited options, this doubles your options for what you can do practically every turn. It's just amazing. You get 2 on the table. Now you get a choice of one out of the best out of 3 cards. I mean, it's quite good.
Yeah, you want to know how you win a card game? You have draw and card selection. I mean, this card is doing it for you. You're cycling your deck. You're getting to the pieces you need quicker. Nobody can argue with that. Anything else? Jill, you were good?
No, I think you guys covered Daily Business Show pretty well.
The last one I had, then I guess might as well show it. There is the Adonis, um, Mister, old school corset drip economy for HB.
Yeah, great value out of this card for HB. What's the influence cost on it
Two.
again? Two. So usually you're not going to see it in anything else other than Blue Sun. Interestingly, Blue Sun can get a lot of value out of it as well, since it can just res it and pull it back to hand right away and get a lot of credits out of it. But definitely great value for the res cost and trash and how many credits you gain off of it. It's going to be around for a while.
The Greg, you got to say anything about the Adon?
It's a classic staple. It's a different card from Eve. I think Eve a lot of times is kind of like a lure. You put it somewhere where you're maybe trying to beta run.
Mm.
Adonis campaign, a lot of times I'm putting it somewhere where I can make sure that I'm going to get the money on it. And it works so much better in a scoring server because it's only going to be there for 3 turns after you res it, versus Adonis, which is there for 8 turns or whatever it is. So in that sense, it's a faster card. Of course, it's a little bit more vulnerable with the 3 trash cost, but Adonis will always be one of the best ways of making money for HB.
So there was, I guess wrapping up quickly, we'll go to a couple comments in the chat. But is there any other ones that were left off the list? Specifically, Joe, anything you can think of that you want to throw out there as assets that you?
No, I don't. Nothing off the top of my head that I thought we left out.
Yeah, there was some, like I say, some traps and different ones, cards that we didn't feel needed to be talked about at this point right now. Not to say they're not good, they're just not prevalent in any of our play styles, any of our metas that we're seeing. So they didn't feel like making the cut in there. So then the last thing, all these assets will just might as well show it. Diversified portfolio, we talked about it. Gonna make you a quick burst. Just want to touch something, make sure that we're covering the comments, and if you guys have any comments, now's the time to hit that up in the chat quickly as we, come down here with the last 5 or so minutes. Something Ben said, just want to hit this one out. Ben says he doesn't think that I tried it in a Daily Business Show is an auto include, and he thinks it was a mistake for them to print it, especially in NBN. You guys' thoughts on that?
I'll touch on that. I don't think it's an auto include at all. I'm not putting it in my current corp deck, though. I'm not playing NBN right now, and I don't know if I would put it in my NBN deck. I don't think it's an auto include. It is very good, but
do you think
that's
it's
my
weird
thoughts
that
on it.
NBN is getting these one influence cards that are auto include to really good, like Jackson and
Well, when Clock comes out, NBN will be sad. So it's all good.
it'll come full circle again.
Yeah.
Greg, any other thoughts? You guys, some people are running store championships in the next week or two.
I just have one closing thought. I think we talked a lot today about maybe assets from the corp side and how to play certain cards. But I think one thing I want to touch on, I guess not in great detail, but just to touch on it, is how to play against this a little bit
Oh yeah,
as the runner.
we did kind of pass over that, and that's probably a good addition here now.
Maybe a good closing topic. But yeah, I think it's really important because the fact that it is on the rise, you have to be ready for it as the runner. And I think that there are a few ways of handling it for different factions. I think Shaper, by and large, has the biggest trouble dealing with heavy asset decks. You might see Shaper splash for Imp, which I think is a great call. I think Imp and Shaper is almost a must, at least in the way that I play Shaper. It seems really really important to have it, and the fact that you can get it and recurse it makes it really strong. So I think that might be your best option for Shaper for dealing with these assets. That and Magnum Opus can be decent too. But Criminal's best option, I think, is security testing and Desperado by far. You get two of those on the table with a whole bunch of assets out there, and there's basically the runner makes unlimited amounts of money, and trashing is not a problem at all. And Anarch, I think, is probably the best suited to deal with assets, whether you just play Wizard straight up, which is a great option, or you play Noise with Imp. Three Imps in an Anarch deck, any Anarch deck is going to be a great option to deal with assets. But I also think that runners, you can't just like automatically draw a line and say there's a Res Sansan on the table, I have to trash it, or there's a Daily Business Show on the table, I have to trash it. I think the general rule is that yes, you need to trash these cards, but like you need to look at the board state too. You need to know how many agendas have been scored. How many cards has the corp drawn that you haven't had a chance to see either in their R&D or in their HQ? Like, because maybe I don't know, like that they're not going to see a few agendas for a while. Well, that buys you a few turns to not trash their Sansan right away. Or maybe you just are putting a lock on their R&D and you say, forget how much money they're going to earn the rest of this game. I can't control it. I can't win this war at this point. Let me just go for accesses. So you have to know when to switch gears as to runner, and also know, like, I think my general rule is if trashing this is going to keep the corp from progressing their game, I'm going to trash it. But there ultimately becomes a point where trashing becomes futile, and you kind of have to really know when that point switches in a game as the runner, or never let it get to that point in the first place.
Yeah, I'm gonna add in that as the runner, if you're playing Criminal, one of the best cards to put in is Bank Job. That card is very good nowadays with open servers with assets in them.
Oh yeah, good point there.
But yeah, it definitely all depends upon game state on whether or not you can trash assets and how powerful they are and how much money you and the corp have.
I mean, yeah, sometimes you just have to say, I'm barely scraping enough money here to get my rig and make runs. I simply cannot trash the assets. Which happens against NBN when you see a couple Astros scored.
Yeah, it's definitely something you learn with playing more games as to when it's right to trash certain assets and when it's right to just leave them and where you are at the game. I put that in one of my Chaos Theory decks like a year ago. It's a pretty bad card.
Did you see that one, Greg?
No, I missed it. What was it?
Do you know this one?
Oh yeah, Parsha, baby.
Yeah, you're saying that Shaper can't trash assets? Well, I say to you, boom! Look at that beast. It took me a while to find it. It was
Scrubber.
buried in my card
It's
pile here.
Scrubber in your deck.
It was tucked away with your Christmas ornaments.
Yeah. So it shows, it kind of beats my argument down already when it took me, 20 minutes to pull this card out. Is Criminal the only faction that doesn't have a trash asset? Or do they?
Yeah, but they make so much money off of servers, so it's much better than trashing assets, cards.
True. But yeah, this, I don't even know how to pronounce this. What would you say, Parisia?
Parsha, Parisia, whatever.
Yeah,
The bird, the seagull of death.
does that card cost MU?
One.
Oh god.
Yeah.
0 install.
0. Yeah, you know it already, Greg. It is 0 to install. It is an MU. I tried it out as well, Joe. I did. When.
Were you sad as well? It's not very good.
I'm sure if I was European, I could make that card be awesome.
Right. Europeans are next level in Netrunner. Freaking Tenon.
But it was a disappointment just because I would put it out there, you know, in the Sand glory days, and it didn't do anything for me.
Right,
Like,
right.
you're hoping it was gonna do work, but it was it was just too much memory management, you know, trying to build around that with a rig, and then you had to put some chips in when you really didn't need chips for extra memory space, and ah,
That's why I say just splash for an imp, call it a day.
yeah, oh,
Well, in the San glory days, that only trashes assets. So that's why it's kind of bad as well.
yeah.
It doesn't trash
No,
San.
no, but that's all the. That's how I remember timing of where
Right.
the game was at when NBN had the
We're still in the
before
San glory
well,
days.
before Near Earth Hub. um, that's about it, guys. I think we answered any questions or mentioned any comments here that were posted. We did go a little over what I thought we did, but I think that victory lap of our asset list is what pushed us over the limit. Um, that's it, man. Welcome to 2015, guys. Good luck on your store championships if they're this week. Next week we're going to talk about the Jinteki ID. Greg, any closing thoughts from you? Shout out to your fans.
Shout out to the fans.
Joe, thanks a bunch for jumping in here. I know
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. It was fun.
it was a last minute thing. You bailed us out.
I was about to play some StimHack League, and this is better though. Better than losing Elo.
Any comments on how the first one went down? You know, like anything you noticed or what you're seeing in the meta right now, so people can get a feel. There's some people that don't play Octagon, so you know, I feel that the people that do have a little bit of understanding of going into these store championships where people are traveling, it prepares you a little better.
So current meta, expect Near Earth Hub and Replicating Perfection, and Andromeda and Shaper, and Noise.
No change.
Same meta.
No change from Worlds then, huh?
Yeah, I guess. Not
And
until Clock comes out, I don't think. Well, Max could be good.
and a lot of IT department everywhere, right?
Hopefully not. Hopefully not.
All right. Well, guys, thanks a bunch. I won't drag this anymore. You know, appreciate everybody who stayed up late, and thanks again tuning in. Catch you later.
See ya.